Welcome back. My name is Arya, and I don't waste your time, so let's get straight into it. The following statement that I'm about to make, I don't mean it as hyperbole. I don't say it to be dramatic or controversial. I genuinely believe that Adobe is the single most misunderstood and the single most dislocated stock that I have come across in my time investing. More than Uber at $60 per share, more than Google at $150, or ASML below $700. And these are all companies that I've invested in, that I've put my reputation on the line, and have consistently identified as opportunities where the market simply got it wrong. And in today's video, I'd like to present my case as to why. Why is it that Adobe is so misunderstood? What are the claims against the company? What are the so-called risk factors that the company has been beaten down over? And more importantly, why all three of them are simply incorrect. And in fact, 2 out of the 3 of them, in my personal opinion, will end up benefiting Adobe over the long term as opposed to hurting it. So without further ado, let's get straight into it. First and foremost, to set the stage, because some of you may have not kept up with Adobe, or if you're watching this video at some point in the future, Adobe as it stands currently is down approximately 50% from the all-time highs, which occurred in late 2021. The company did go on to kind of rally into 2023 and 2024, almost making new all-time highs. But as you can see, since early 2024, we've been on this continuous downtrend where the stock has essentially continued to drop month after month with no breaks in between. All the while, the fundamentals of the business continue to improve. The business continues to grow its revenues, continues to grow its profitability, its margins, and has done heaps and heaps of buybacks. Now, the fundamental section of the video will be all the way at the end where we talk about all those different things. Today's focus is mostly on the qualitative side of Adobe. We're going to kind of dissect 3 different things, the 3 so-called risk factors of Adobe. And you could basically summarize these 3 things down to number 1, and I would say this is probably the biggest, the scariest, the baddest of them all, is AI video and photo generation. In a world where AI video and photo generation, which as it stands today is not good enough, but as it gets good enough, there will be no need to manually use Adobe software to generate these images or generate these videos. If AI is good enough for everybody to generate videos like that, why would you ever manually want to edit anything? And sure, it's not there, the technology is not there yet today, but 5 years down the line, 7 years down the line, 10 years down the line, with the rapid growth and innovation, eventually there can be a day later down the line where Adobe becomes obsolete. So that's claim number 1, AI just outright replacing Adobe because nobody will need to manually create images. And that's what we're going to spend, the bulk of the video kind of talking about. Item number 2, once we kind of get past that, another fear that people have is increased competition from cheaper, more nimble, just overall better tools. Examples of these can be Canva and Figma, which you may have heard of, particularly Figma because it had a pretty blockbuster IPO earlier in the year. The stock has fell a lot since then. Sort of these more nimble, smaller competitors that are gaining rapid market share, quote unquote. We'll again dive into those claims later on, but they're kind of eating at Adobe's moat. It's a death by a million cuts, if you will. There isn't one big main competitor that has come along, but there's 100 different competitors that are all good at a little portion of the entire Adobe bundle. And then lastly, another fear that has came up is even if Adobe somehow survives the competition, even if they somehow survive the AI generation stuff, if Adobe can integrate AI into their products and survive all of that, the software as a service model of charging per seat or charging per license per person that uses that software will also hurt within the long term. The reason being, in a world where AI gets integrated into Adobe and they, win the AI wars, whatever the case is, Adobe will struggle because each employee is now way more productive. If each employee is way more productive, that means you need less total employees to do the same amount of work. If you need less total employees, that will ultimately hurt Adobe because they charge per employee or they charge per license of the software being sold. This is a question of whether generative AI or AI as a whole will be dilutive to seats. That's how the CEO has kind of framed it. Will it be dilutive to seats? And this isn't an Adobe specific thing. This is a software as a service wide thing. This can impact Salesforce. This can impact Monday.com. This can impact a wide variety of different software companies of the quote unquote old generation, right? So we're going to dive into that as well. First and foremost, we're going to tackle the big one right away. Will AI ultimately, or I should say generative AI, the ability to generate videos and the ability to generate photos, will that ultimately hurt Adobe? As always, videos timestamped, so feel free to skip around to all the different places where you may be concerned about. And to answer the question whether generative AI will actually hurt Adobe, I think we all need to get on the same page. Some of you may be experts in the company and understand it very well, but I think we all need to get on the same page of what is Adobe, because it's a little bit different to every single person. Some people, of course, know it as the PDF company. This is a real thing. If you go over to my Twitter, you can see people are calling it the PDF company, that it benefited off of the monopoly that it has had over the PDF for the past 30 years, and that's becoming irrelevant. This is a genuine belief held by some very sophisticated investors. That's a real thing. Some of you, of course, know it as the Photoshop company because Photoshop is almost like a verb. Is that picture Photoshopped? This is a real life verb similar to Google it or similar to let's just Uber there. It's a real life verb mode that people use. Some of you may know it as the industry standard for editing videos. You may have heard some YouTubers talking about Premiere Pro as how they edit their YouTube videos, Illustrator for vector art. There's, of course, Acrobat. This is This is the PDF portion that I was talking about, right? So a lot of people know it for that. A lot of photographers in specific know about, for example, After Effects. Anyways, point is they have a lot of apps. They have roughly 60 different apps, and the main bundle that they try to sell their customers is the Creative Cloud bundle. Depending on your region, this bundle typically costs about $70 to $100 per month. You can also obviously purchase, for example, other softwares, or let's just say you want one of the apps, you can just purchase that app. There's a variety of different ways that they've kind of sectioned off all these different apps and sell it at various different prices. If you're a business, the prices are a little bit different. If you're a student, if you're a school or a university. So there's a lot of different ways that they've bundled up all these different apps. The point is, there's a lot of the apps and it's all bundled together. It's like a bundle of value that you can do all of your creative work on. Follow-up question to that, and I want you to try to answer this for yourself. Feel free to, pause the video and say it out loud if you need be. Who is the customer of Adobe? Serious question. Who is the customer of Adobe? Of course, we know that, people that need to get creative work done use them, but what does that mean exactly? Who are those people? In what industries do they work? What is the work that they're using to generate with Adobe software? The answer to that question isn't very straight cut. There's a lot of people that use Adobe, right? And from the slides that we've been given in their Adobe Summit, you can see that they've kind of sectioned it off into three different sort of categories of users. This creative professionals and creators at the bottom here, by the way. And then within those categories, there's sort of subcategories. Now, I'm not going to bother reading through all of them, but as you can see, there's some generally like pretty popular use cases that you would imagine is used for Adobe. There's advertising, brand and product marketing, website and apps, product design, entertainment, gaming, so on and so forth, right? Now, what's important to note with this is that of all the different users, and this is specifically talking to the users of Adobe, of all the different users of Adobe, based off of this graphic and another graphic that we're given, not graphic, but another statistic that we're given from Adobe, we can basically back into a number that about 70%, roughly 70% of Adobe users are quote unquote professionals. What I mean by professionals is these are people who are working in a company. Now that could be a company of, 7 people. It's a small marketing agency that you do local advertising videos for the local plumbing business or the local grocery store, whatever the case is, right? These can be like small little marketing agencies that, again, rely on this software on a day-to-day, or it could be all the way up to companies such as Pepsi or Coca-Cola, Nike, Disney, huge, massive Fortune 500 companies that rely on this software for their employees on a day-to-day basis to generate advertising, to measure the analytics on that advertising, and access it through a content management system. They rely on Adobe software on a day-to-day basis. What we can sum from this information that we're given from Adobe is that about 70% of, again, users, not revenue, users, rely on this software on a day-to-day basis. To show you the proof of it, this is the Q3 investor data sheet, and between all four of these categories, creative, marketing professionals, and business professionals, only the consumer portion is sort of just average everyday users, somebody like a YouTuber like me who would maybe be subscribing to it, like actual consumers. Everybody else, 70-75% roughly, are professionals that rely on the software on a day-to-day basis, and usually they're part of a team building plan. And if we look at it, if you kind of work backwards with the math, you end up arriving at roughly 10% or so of the total revenues of the entire business comes from consumers. Consumers that are, often loud about Adobe being a big bad company, raising prices too much, expensive software, we're forced to use it, so on and so forth. Now, the reason I've taken you on a 10-minute side tangent to explain all of that is because we're going to use that information for the entirety of the video moving forward. What I need you to understand, if the rest of the video is going to make sense, is Adobe is a professional's business. It is a software for professionals, people that often use it for hours on end every single day and require Adobe's precise and comprehensive tools to make very detailed and intricate images, videos, etc. Whatever it is, anything creative related, right? So to really target the AI portion of the argument now, I'd like to employ what I like to say is if you're going to get something out of my entire YouTube channel, out of any of my videos, I want you to take this away with you to become a better investor. Use a first principles line of thinking. What that means is, don't say, AI's coming, it's bad for Adobe. Don't say Tesla's launching robo-taxis, Uber's screwed. That doesn't make sense. That's very a lazy and easy narrative to kind of try to spell. What you need to do is think of it from a first principles basis. Think, how will Uber be disrupted by robo-taxi? Well, they would obviously need to be cheaper, but then at the same time, it needs to be available everywhere. For it to be available everywhere, you need a lot of cars everywhere. For a lot of cars to be available everywhere, you need to have somebody manage the fleet of these cars everywhere, clean the cars, deal with lost items, have the correct routing at the correct different times of day when there's peaks and troughs in terms of demand. Because obviously, during rush hour, between the hours of 8 to 9 a.m. and then the hours of, 4 to 6 p.m., there's a surge in demand, and then there's a trough in demand in later hours. So you have to figure all these different things out. So do you really think if they just solve the technology, then they're good to go? No, they need to do all of these other things, right? The same line of thinking, we've already been using it this video for Adobe, but I'm going to continue to use it. Just the advent of the technology alone does not mean immediate doom for Adobe. With Adobe, in order to determine whether this company will be disrupted by AI or not, we need to ultimately determine what would it take for a customer of Adobe to leave Adobe and go to generative AI and do all of their work on generative AI tools such as Gemini or OpenAI or whoever the case. Now, the current narrative in the market is, well, of course, this AI thing has came about. It's not that good yet. It's not too polished. Over time, it's going to get better. And over time, as it gets better, it will be so good that nobody will need to make images in Photoshop and edit them because you can just prompt it in and it's good to go. Now, that's a very fun narrative. And for, low-end users, I am a perfect example of a low-end user because I make thumbnails on YouTube. That's my use case of a sort of Photoshop competitor, right? Somebody like me, if AI does actually get good enough eventually, right, the technology issue is solved, yes, I can probably just prompt ChatGPT, 3, 4, 5 follow-up prompts, whatever the case is, get my thumbnail, boom, put it into YouTube, and I'm good to go. I'm happy to probably pay 10, 15, 20 bucks a month for something like that, right? But again, who is the customer of Adobe? 90% plus of the revenues comes from professionals. There's a very important key detail that narrative skips over, very conveniently skips over, and that is the element of control. Ladies and gentlemen, professionals within Nike, within Disney, even down to the small marketing agency, they need something very important. They need control over their work. No matter how good AI gets, there will ultimately come a case where you prompt something inside of ChatGPT, it gives you back something that is very good. It's almost there, but you need to polish it up. That last 10%, that last 5%, you need to polish it up. Maybe it's the way the font is organized. It's not on quite the right slant, whatever. You got to take it into Photoshop and manually slant it for yourself. Not to mention, it's costly every time you prompt, hey, slant the text a little bit more. Hey, I want the tree to be this shade of pink. And it gives you a pink that doesn't look quite as good, right? Or let's just say you want to test out multiple different colors. You just take it to Adobe or you take it to Photoshop and you manually put the different shades of pink, right? There is an element of control with professionals that is required. Somebody like me making YouTube thumbnails, maybe not as much. If you're Pepsi, you're making an ad for the Super Bowl, you're about to spend $15 million for a 30-second placement, are you really going to cheap out and not pay a couple $1,000s to Adobe to have that element of control? The answer is no. You're going to keep that software around because when you're making that $15 million ad for the Super Bowl, your employees need control over their work to be able to perfect it. That is the standard that Pepsi holds their employees to. That is the standard that Disney holds their employees to when they're making Hollywood movies that have costed them $300, $400, $1 billion of investment for the next Avengers movie. You need that control. Adobe gives you that control. And control is something that generative AI, due to the nature of it, can never offer. You type in a prompt, no matter how long or how accurate it is, the AI engine will always give you something that is slightly different than what a professional wants. Or there will come a time where you want to edit it and it won't edit perfectly. It'll get close, but if you just simply take it to Photoshop, it'll be a lot easier to manually edit it to your liking. Now, that's one side of the equation, but it's still not a strong enough point for us to conclude that generative AI will not disrupt Adobe. At the end of the day, I just told you, there's a lot of cases where the generative AI is good enough right away and you can just go make that ad with it and it's good to go, right? But there's, specific edge use cases in the very long future that you would still need to kind of take it into Photoshop, whatever, right? Even in that scenario, that means the total usage of Adobe goes down over time, right? So not great. Now, the point number 2, right? Point number 1 is you need control. Point number 2 is I think this belief that everyone kind of assumes or thinks that in the very distant future, all content will be generated AI images. This is not true. There's a lot of cases where, you're recording a movie. You're going to go record the actual actors and then later on bring in, for example, CGI or visual effects and so on and so forth and add it to the scene. This is already something that has been done for 30 years, probably, maybe longer than that, where you add CGI and visual effects. What AI effectively does is it makes those visual effects way faster to generate. Now, I'm using a movie because that's a very clear example, but think of, for example, an advertisement where all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you need a setting where it's like raining outside, but you're in sunny California. So instead of, flying your team to go record somewhere where it's raining, you can just add AI visual effects on the window, put some fog there, whatever the case is, add some rain, add some thunderstorm, AI generated a little bit of noise of the thunderstorm, and congratulations, you've now generated on top of like raw footage of your people recording inside the house. On top of that raw footage, you've now generated artificial rain in the background of the advertisement, right? Now, there's countless examples I could kind of go through of like various different use cases. The great thing about Adobe in particular is, for example, if we take like Pepsi or something, they're doing an advertisement. Firefly, which is the model of Adobe, is the only IP or brand safe generative AI tool that exists in the world today. And this becomes especially important for enterprises in the world, because you need that brand safeness to be able to do your advertising or to be able to do your marketing. The last thing you'd want as Nike or as Pepsi is to get a lawsuit delivered into your headquarters from a competitor saying, hey, this little thing that you included in this ad, that's our intellectual property. You were not supposed to use that. And so Adobe can safely train on top of your intellectual property of the company and be able to provide and generate images that are IP safe because it's specific to your company. This dives into something that I'll show you later in the video of custom models as well, where Adobe can now train, I believe it's called small language models. So we have large language models. So there's SMLs where it can train on your previous work that you've done. And this could be, you could be big company, you could be small company. It trains on your previous work and it kind of generates images to the style of creative work that you've done in the past. Very interesting. So I'll show you guys later. Anyways, going back to the IP thing. Point number 2, it's important for Adobe to make all those generations in an IP safe way. Now, this again, in of itself is not that good of a reason to conclude that Adobe won't be disrupted, because at the end of the day, somebody like Google or somebody like OpenAI can copy that, and over time, it won't be as good of a moat. But the point here is, Adobe is already, through its softwares and tools, integrated into the enterprise. They're already a customer of Adobe. Adobe already has access to all of their work and all their IP, whereas they would have to kind of like submit that work or submit that IP to a Gemini or to an OpenAI for them to be able to generate that. And so this is a point of massive differentiation that Adobe has that nobody else on earth really has. I think maybe like somebody like a Figma could maybe have that point of differentiation because they have the customer data, but that's about it, right? So point number 2, they have that sort of like IP safe moat with Firefly in particular. Now, of course, there's a lot of cases where that alone isn't that big of an issue. You would like to, generate like a generic sort of like puddle in the image, whatever the case is. And of course, Nano and VO are very great engines that you can use for this. But the issue is that it's only good for generation. You don't have the software interface on top of that to be able to edit it afterwards. So you can generate something in VO or Nano, but then you'd have to take it back into Adobe to edit it. Now here, we are at a very important crossroads, okay? And this is point number 3. We're at a very important crossroads here. If you're Google today and you've just spent you're about to spend hundreds of billions of dollars in CapEx, you've spent probably, 100 and a bit billion in terms of CapEx for NVIDIA GPUs over the past couple of years. You've put up this massive investment to create the AI model. What do you choose to do from this point to monetize that AI model? Because so far, it's like pretty much free. You have 2 options. 1, build a bunch of software on top of that, which involves another couple $10 billion of R&D investments. Or B, essentially serve as the infrastructure layer, license out your Gemini model to softwares that already exist in the world, and then get them to essentially charge for credits and then give you a commission for every credit used. You're at a crossroads. What would you do if you're Google today? Well, we don't have to speculate on what Google would do because they've already decided, and they decided 3 months ago. Their decision was that, hey, we're not going to go compete with Salesforce, Adobe, this and that, and every other software known to mankind. We're just going to license our Gemini model to them and make very, very high margin revenues as a result of it. And so ask yourself this question. If you're Google today and you truly have ambitions of disrupting Adobe, would you give them your leading AI model so that they can make revenues on it, so that they can offer to their customers and show to their customers that, hey, you don't need to go over to Google to generate this AI thing. You can do it right in Photoshop right now. Hey, did you want to use the Firefly model or did you want to use the Gemini model? You have options because we're partnered up with Google, and the model is actually integrated into a chatbot inside of Photoshop, and you can just prompt whatever you like right there. We'll figure out the economics with Google on the back end there. We'll just split them like 50-50 or whatever the case is. This is what has happened in the world today. I don't think most people realize this. People who, kind of look into Adobe and so on and so forth, I don't think they look far enough to realize OpenAI is integrated, Google is integrated. There's a lot more other models that are integrated that you probably haven't even heard of, but I know one of them is made by, I think it's called Flux by 11 Labs, and it's like really good at video generation. It's actually at some point has been the leading model, better than Google, better than OpenAI. Everything like that is included inside of Adobe today. They have 6 different models. And it's ultimately a question of incentive alignment, right? What is Google's incentive? Their incentive is to, as quickly as possible, without having to render more costs, be able to monetize that AI model. The fastest way to monetize that AI model is to essentially partner up with these software makers and do like a revenue share model of kind of licensing out your model to them so that they can essentially resell it at a markup. And then you, Google, serve as the infrastructure layer. You're kind of tapping into their distribution and monetizing their customers without having to acquire those customers to begin with. How powerful is that? How good is that for Google? So again, if Google or OpenAI genuinely had the ambitions of disrupting Adobe or replacing Adobe in some capacity, would they give them their models? The answer is very obviously no, they wouldn't give them their models. And this is actually a very strategic alliance, I think particularly for Google and Adobe. As I kind of just alluded to it, I think Google is the net bigger benefactor of this. Adobe, to some capacity, is actually doing Google the favor by partnering up with them here. That will be saved for a later segment in the video. So far, professionals need control. Professionals need IP-safe methods of generating videos and photos. Professionals have absolutely no incentive to use Google or use OpenAI because it doesn't even have a software interface. And on top of that, those models that are really good at generating images, they're already inside Photoshop today. They're already inside, and I keep using Photoshop as an example, they're already inside of all of the different Adobe products today. And so they recently, I think a couple weeks ago, did the Adobe Max conference, and they revealed 27 new products, or I should say new features for their different softwares. Between these 27 new features, 24 of them were AI integrated features. That word right there, by the way, AI, or not word, that phrase, AI integrated features, is very important because I believe, and I think Adobe believes, and I think Google believes, this will be the future of creative design work across the world. AI integrated features. You will never have a point, I shouldn't say never. In the majority of use cases, you will not have a creative professional go over to Gemini.com, prompt something in, and boom, that's the new Pepsi ad for the Super Bowl. It won't happen. Instead, what you will have is they have this general idea. They kind of create the base layer of it. Maybe they use some AI generated content within it, but the entire thing isn't AI generated. You have AI generated features that kind of complement the entire thing and kind of speed up the process. And I could sit here and try to describe it to you, but I think the best way for you to understand what I'm saying is to literally just show you. And so I gone through, and I didn't pick the best ones. I just picked some of them that looked cool to me, and we'll kind of go through it. The last one, by the way, is very, very impressive. I think it really ties together everything I just described. So I'll kind of show you these one by one, and we'll talk about it afterwards. This first one is the custom models thing that I just mentioned. So based off of the trained work that you already have within Adobe, based off of the work and the style that you already have within Adobe products, you're now able to generate images that are similar to your style.
And that's why I want to introduce you to custom models. Now, what are custom models? It's your own personalized version of Firefly, safely trained on your assets that reflect sort of your content, your style, your aesthetic. But I'm not talking about it. We're here to train. Let's do this dance. Right, I'm going to go ahead and create something based on, again, my work. Right in here, jump in here. Style is what I'm going for right now. Designers in the audience, we've all been there. Like, who am I as a designer? What is my style? Like, who am I, right? You have those crises? Don't worry about it. We got you. Because you could just drop in some of your style references, some of your images right in here. Collecting dust on my hard drive, right? Flowers are wilting here. You know, I made all this up by hand. I will always do this. Absolutely love it. But now I get to take that content, load it right into my custom model, right? And that's what's happening right now. We can take a look. Again, an image, probably post to Instagram, got like 5 likes. If one of you 5 are out there, thank you very much. But again, I get to repurpose that content. What's happening now? It's being scanned, tagged, and it's generating a caption based on the content and also understanding the style. So I don't have to worry about it, which is nice. So we could wait. This takes a couple minutes. I'm going to jump out and go to a model I already have created right here. So again, you need as few as 10. I got like over 30 here. Have fun. Drop them in there. We could take a look at any one of these.
So very quickly, I want to pause here, but here, this is what I was talking about. They train based off of the content that you provide to the model. And so, for example, for Paul here, there's a Paul's graphic design style. There's a Paul's nature collages. There's a retro style. Paul's character model, right? So there's a variety of different styles that this guy has. And he specifically mentioned, he's like, for any of you designers out there, you know that, your Photoshop style versus your Illustrator style is a little bit different. The point is, based off of the data that already exists inside of Adobe, they're able to make the generative AI kind of flow to your style of content. And so I'm not going to, spend too much time going through this entire thing, but as you can see, he's able to generate a bunch of different flowery sort of birds and animals and so on and so forth. And then at the end here, he gives us an example of, okay, let's just say you like this picture overall, right? It's good, but we need to maybe adjust a couple of the leaves. Maybe the leaves don't look quite as right. And look what he does.
Generating other places, I'll come in here. I'm going to shift gears because now I'm in Photoshop. I have all these assets. Here's my cute little birdie, right? And then just to drive home the point, guys, I'm so used to placing each and every flower. I will continually add those details because I love doing it. Maybe I'll leave that right there. But this is the idea. I've realized as a designer, my whole time designing, I've been working and creating these little scenes that are like this big. And what custom models has really enabled me to do is open it up to whole new worlds that I don't even know if I'd attempt this prior to custom models. This is where you clap. Thank you, everybody. So much fun. I hope you feel empowered, may it open up whole new horizons for you.
So do you see what's special there? He's able to generate all these contents and bring them together and kind of organize them afterwards. It's nice that you're able to generate just, for example, one image or whatever. It's the attention to detail to be able to adjust them and change the locations and all that type of stuff. Even if the image were to generate this entire thing all together at the very beginning, because he's a designer, maybe he wants to put the whale on the left side and the turtle on the right side. Again, you can prompt the image to do prompt the AI to do this. One, it's going to be costly, and two, it might not completely nail it. Maybe just a little bit you want to move it to the left. Whatever the case is, maybe you want to see different versions of this where the whale is an alligator, or there is no whale, or these pillars, there's multiple of these pillars, right? Whatever the case is, at some point you will require to bring this into Photoshop and manually adjust and play around with it, even if for the most part the actual content of the image is AI generated. Now, this is another great example of what I'm kind of talking about. This is now Photoshop, and they've put an AI assistant inside of Photoshop, a so-called, almost like a co-pilot, right? And this is really special because this is a raw footage. This is a real footage of a house that she actually took. And then normally with Photoshop, then you would kind of edit it afterwards and, for example, change the skyline, whatever the case is, add text over it. This is supposed to be for a magazine, for example. So you would do these things to the image afterwards, right? But because of the AI assistant, you're now able to essentially accelerate your workflow, do everything you used to do, but way faster. And so I'll kind of play it and then we'll talk about it again.
Head start on my project. The photos I take normally need a little bit of love. My sky here is a little washed out. I'm gonna need to create some masks. This is perfect for the assistant because it can get me started on all of those things at once. I'm just prompting it in the right panel here to decrease the brightness of everything except the subject and increase the saturation of the entire image.
And it's amazing. You can see here, it's actually starting to, with one prompt, starting to look at the prompt, understand it, reason over it, and the AI assistant has decided to create a mask, generate a layer, do it all non-destructively so that Emma can go and fine-tune it right after.
Exactly. It's still giving me full creative control, so I can go in and tweak things however I like. I mean, talk about a glow up. Here's the before, and here is the after. The assistant just coming in clutch, giving me that head start that I needed. And imagine how much time this would save me with 5, 10, 50 images and actions, right?
Absolutely. And what Emma just showed and what Jordan showed is how you can use the AI assistant to ask your application to do something for you that will save you time, and again, non-destructively, so that you can go and perfect it. But what about advice? Sometimes you want to just ask it, what can I do? What can I make? What can I improve?
So glad you asked. So I think this is looking pretty good. I went ahead and dropped it into this design that I've been working on. And like you said, another great way to use the assistant to give me a second set of eyes. I can actually see what's on my canvas. Like I have some text and some other elements here. Of course, I'm gonna need to share this with someone like my creative director to get their thoughts. Before I do that, I'm gonna prompt the assistant just using natural language and say, hey, can you review my design? Do you see any issues with my text, my composition, or my color? Again, we're just making sure that I didn't miss anything. So let's see what it said. Looks like the overall layout feels balanced. Raise the roof, love that. Colors work well together, thank you for whoever said that. Looks like my contrast is a little bit low in my text here. You can see that up here. The assistant actually gave me some really great suggestions on how to fix that. I have an idea though, David. Do you want to see what I got up my sleeve? I'm going to change this to orange here. Let's bring out the color of the door. Let's make this just a smidge brighter, just like this. Amazing. Another example of the assistant helping me out, giving me a second set of eyes so I can design with confidence. Okay, so far I've used the assistant to give me a head start on my project, and we just saw it give me really useful feedback that I handled without crying. Thank you. Got one more thing for you. My layers panel, it's looking like a total mess. I know what you're all thinking. I know what you're thinking. Who let this girl on stage with unnamed layers? It's a rookie mistake, I know. So I'm gonna use the assistant to make me look a little bit better up here. Gonna give it one of my favorite prompts. Rename all my layers based on my content. Woo!
This is amazing. The AI assistant, wow, this is what we expected with the layer naming.
Yeah.
It's looking at all of your layers, it's doing a visual analysis, and then based on that, it's starting to change the names of the layers.
Exactly. It actually sees my content and knows what's in them, so it'll give me really great layer names. Check it out. Oh my gosh, you guys, my layers have literally never looked better. I know, this is amazing. And at the end here, the assistant is going to give me a summary of all the layers it renamed for me. So that is a
Are you starting to see the power of this marriage? The marriage of AI and softwares, the power of these two kind of joining together and essentially accelerating the workflow of creatives around the entire world. This is a software that holds a 60% market share in the world. Adobe has came out in previous years and stated that approximately 90% of professionals around the world have used or are currently using a variety of Adobe products. Adobe is undoubtedly the standard of the industry. When you integrate AI, these are integrated AI features, whether it's the assistant, whether it's the custom models I just showed you, whatever the case is, it essentially accelerates the workflow. It makes what used to take her probably, I don't know, if she had to manually rename those layers, or if she had to manually create the layers altogether, right? Like the house is a layer, the sky is a layer, that text right there is a layer, getting feedback on it. There's so many different things that we're able to do with this. Or, you know, she literally, I think, put a prompt in there that said, can you touch up my image a little bit? So, and then based off of that, like, you know, it made the greens a little bit more vibrant. It made the sky a little bit more vibrant. It made the house a little bit sharper to really like, you know, emphasize the focus on the subject, which is the house. It was able to identify that the house is the subject of the image. Are you starting to see the power here? We're still not done. I have a couple more examples for you. We're not going to watch the entire clip. Adobe Max is 3 hours long. If you're thinking of becoming an Adobe shareholder, I do recommend you probably watch most of it. There's a lot of great different features in here. The next timestamp I have here is 104. This is another use case for it. So basically, you have these 3 different images of, you know, this color, the astronaut, and this mountain range. These are all AI generated, and then they're basically asking, can you kind of blend the 3 of these? Oh, by the way, this is a good way to show you. These are all the different partner models they have. So they have Flux, and they've put that number 1 for a reason because it's the best one. There's all the different Google ones. There's GPT Image, which there's only one. There's Ideogram, and there's Runway Gen 4. So there's a lot of different models that are available inside of Firefly. I would imagine they, you know, start integrating more as there's more that comes out. But as you can see, the model was able to put the 3 of these images kind of together. Maybe the first one, again, it doesn't look too good. Then you can ask it to generate 16 different versions of the same exact image. And as you can see, it generated 16 different versions of the same exact image. It's also very collaborative. On the side here, you have comments. So similar to a Figma or whatever the case is, you have Michael, whoever Michael is, and he's, you know, commenting on this stuff and saying, this one's cool, whatever, I like this one, whatever the case is. Another cool one to show you, this girl, she's from Wales, so she flew all the way to SF to just do this demo, basically, for like 3 minutes. But she did like a little vlog that was part of her demo. And as a part of her vlog, she wanted to make a transition. And she wanted the transition to be, you know, this video right here, and kind of make it like a cartoon style image, or a cartoon style video. So this is what the transition now looks like. It's like a little cartoon thing, and then the street loads, and she did all of that in like literally 3-4 minutes using a mixture of Firefly and Photoshop and whatever, just all the Adobe tools all together, right? And then later there's another example of this like turtle that like just jumps out of the side of the building. Yeah, here we go. So she has this turtle. She already went through and, you know, enhanced it and did all that with the VO model. And then now we have the turtle that, you know, just jumps out of the building, water pouring onto the California streets, and it starts flying. So within a couple minutes, she did that using Adobe products. And so here you have literally, I don't know who this lady is, but the speaker from the Adobe conference literally talking about the exact same thing that I've been talking about. As a creative, you ultimately need control over your work. You need that fine-tuning ability over your work, no matter whether it's generative or somebody else took the picture or whatever. It doesn't matter. You need control. So let's give it a listen.
While generative models are getting better and better at producing amazing outputs, they just can't do everything Photoshop can do. And the core reason comes down to control. In Photoshop, you are in ultimate control. You are handcrafting the edits, which means you can maintain content fidelity, edit non-destructively, composite across layers, achieve pixel-perfect precision. I mean, truly, the list goes on and on. So while the content creation floor is rising with fast-paced innovation in generative models, the need to create standout content is more important than ever. This requires precise control, and that is the soul of Photoshop. We are already seeing how much you are enthusiastically adopting new AI-powered workflows in Photoshop, like generative fill, which is one of the top 5 most used features in Photoshop. In fact, 2 out of 3 Photoshop users use generative AI in their workflows.
I'm going to stop that right there. Generative fill, which is essentially you circle something on the photo and say add a puddle, add a shark, add whatever. Generative fill is already a top 5 Photoshop feature. It's a top 5 used Photoshop feature alongside like What was the list? Like cropping? Yeah, layered masks, cropping, putting in text, and then you have generative fill at number 5. These are such basic features. Your iPhone has some of these features. It is already a top 5 feature. She just said 2 out of 3 Photoshop users use generative fill. So again, the whole idea of, oh, Adobe's going to get disrupted by AI. No, they've integrated AI. Their users are using AI. There's almost a 0% chance that the people that already have what they're looking for inside of, the software that they're using, why would they ever switch to, solely relying on Gemini or solely relying on OpenAI or whatever to generate their images if they're already generating inside of Photoshop and they have that element of control? They're already used to the software for decades. If you actually switch to a OpenAI to do your creative work as a professional, you're actually, downgrading massively because you don't have that user interface of getting that granularity or getting the tools or whatever. You're kind of relying on prompt engineering to get your work done. Again, it's so stupid. It doesn't even make sense. I guarantee if you were to talk to a professional who's actually doing, like working on advertisements for Pepsi, if you were to talk to them, they would probably laugh in your face if you even, came close to suggesting, hey, like, would you ever give up Photoshop and move over to OpenAI as your image editor? They would hysterically laugh at you and go back to using Photoshop right afterwards, right? What a complete joke. Anyways, she goes on and she kind of explains these type of things further, but you guys are starting to get the idea. Ultimately, when it comes down to creative software for professionals specifically, you need control. And more importantly, like if you switch to just a video editor, there's no point to doing that because you have access to the same models inside of the creative softwares you're used to. And then more importantly, you have these AI integrated features, such as making the custom models, such as making generative fill, such as making that transition thing, whatever that was, right? There's another 24 examples. Another cool example, I don't have the video here or timestamp or whatever, but like an audio, like for example, if you're, recording outside, there's wind in the background, there's a fire truck blaring going by, maybe one of your crew members is talking a little bit. You can dissect the audio into different layers and remove the wind and remove the fire truck and remove your team member talking and whispering near the microphone. Whatever the case is, you can remove different layers of the audio, which is ridiculous. Using AI, they're able to integrate that into Premiere Pro. It's a feature that exists today. And so I'll show you one last thing before we move on, but I would say this is probably the most impressive thing I've shown you so far. Basically, he put this astronaut inside of this like alien looking beach, whatever, and see what he does from this point forward.
The big thing I need to do now is dive in and make him match like he's actually standing in this environment. So Photoshop users, this means adjustment layers, painting, stacking, like all this work to remove the blue and all that good stuff. If there's only an easier way, there better be if you're bringing it up, Paul. Harmonize. In Photoshop, click one button there. I have my subject, I have my background. It's analyzing the background, my lights, my darks. What color is the light? I don't know. I don't have to worry about it. What is my subject on? What is this? There's so many questions that I have to actually figure out typically, and I'm like, boom, yes. Wait, before, after. Don't tell your boss about this, right? That's what I want. You have choices. 2, you get to be art director. If you like this one, oh yeah, I got a promotion.
Are you starting to see the power of this? AI integrated features, ladies and gentlemen. They integrate inside of Photoshop, inside of Premiere Pro, Illustrator, InDesign, inside of the 60 different apps that Adobe has, the 60 apps that are the industry standard where they hold a 60% market share, where 90% of the creative professionals of the world use those softwares. Ladies and gentlemen, the power of AI integrated features saves you time and works flawlessly. And this is just the beginning. This is 2-3 years maximum that they've been able to kind of innovate with these features and start to incorporate it into the various different softwares. What happens 5 years from now when Adobe has 5 years of innovation that they can put down and create more of these type of features, right? I mean, truly, the sky is just the limit for particularly professionals being able to use these different type of things. And he just talked about how, previously he would have had to adjust all the layers and, get rid of the blue lighting and the exposure and this and that. And it would have taken probably an hour to figure it out. But with that, I already forgot what the name of the feature was. Anyways, very quickly with the Harmonize, that's what it was. With the Harmonize feature, the astronaut looks like he belongs to that environment, right? I mean, truly incredible. So in summary, there's a couple key things that we have discovered throughout this video. Creatives need control over their work. The generated AI videos and pictures, they're really never going to be perfect. And true professionals, and that makes up 90+% of Adobe's revenues, they require the fine tuning. They need the A/B testing. They need to generate several versions of the same graphic or the same ad and compare them. And all of these things are possible to do in a Gemini interface, but why would you ever do that as a professional if Gemini is already inside of Adobe? And mind you, the key decision maker to whether we're going to switch off of Adobe or not is an executive who has so far decided to stick with Adobe, and odds are they're probably going to continue to stick with Adobe because they don't see the upside of switching and trying to substitute Gemini for Adobe. And to be very frank, it's 10 times easier to generate all these different things inside of Adobe because the AI meshes together. We already looked at, the generative fill AI feature, which I didn't actually show you, but feel free to Google it and you'll see how powerful it is. That is a top 5 feature inside of Photoshop already. 2 out of 3 users of Photoshop use that feature. And then of course, the cherry on top, OpenAI and Gemini, they've basically already admitted to the fact that we're not going to compete with Adobe because they've decided to actually partner up with Adobe. If they wanted to compete, they wouldn't license out the AI model to them, and instead they would be currently building a design software to compete with Adobe. Obviously, they're not going to do that. The long of it all is Adobe can't be disrupted by AI because Adobe is the AI within the creative industry. Millions of professionals who have been using Photoshop or any of the softwares for decades, they gain nothing by switching to a different alternative. Instead, they have integrated AI features in their workflow that they're used to. They've been using Photoshop for decades. They have integrated AI features inside of that workflow that they can now use to save them countless hours on work that previously used to take them on manual, grungy sort of work that used to take them a long time. And the most important thing here is their nature of work can't really be replaced by a couple prompts. It's deliberately difficult, complex illustrations. I mean, we kind of looked at it all, right? It's videos that requires a massive amount of time editing. The AI integrated features can help them do that easier. It won't completely replace their work. They still need to do the complex and high attention to detail work to begin with. So the AI integrated features is a way better suited solution to their problems than just, Gemini this from scratch. Now, we spent a lot of time here and we've covered a lot of things. I've recorded 2 parts for this video. In the second part of the video, I'll address the competition issues, the seat dilution issue that I talked about, and also do some valuation work on how the stock can actually work out in a disaster scenario. If everything I just said over the past hour goes completely wrong somehow, you still end up making money on the stock. I've built out a disaster scenario where you still end up making money on the stock. So I've released that over on the Patreon. So if you're seeing this video, if you just click the link in the description, sign up for Patreon for $3 a month, you can get early access to watching the second part of this video. Otherwise, I'll release it within a couple weeks' time. So with that being said, thank you very much for watching and have a great day.